you'll probably have most of your questions for today already answered. But if not, or if you want to ask them here for the sake of the community, please do. And for those who are wondering, uh, if you reach out to me through the links in my bio here on YouTube, go to my Facebook, you can reach out to me directly there. And I'm happy to chat with you about meditation and so forth. Also, as I have mentioned before, the I've put together really detailed course materials for the types of meditation that I teach and practice. And I have a full fledged book on the subject that I've been working on for many years. And that's very soon going to be part of that course. The course materials that you find in the course up to now are just excerpts from the book. So the complete book will be on there soon. Hello, Offer John. Welcome. Welcome. I see there's a few other people floating through the live. If you have questions about meditation or you're interested in meditation practice, please just put the questions in the chat. And we will be doing some practice today. The live, I think today will be limited to about an hour. So I'm going to spend more time doing practice with everyone today rather than just doing, you know, more blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to wait just a little while. I'm going to blah, blah, blah while I wait to see if a couple of questions come in. If they don't come in, then what I'll do is we'll just get going with intensive breath meditation, which is the first technique I usually teach. Oh, that's very kind of you, Cleric. Honestly, I don't even have it in a full-on book format. It's just written out basically as one big Word document. But it's fairly well polished at this point. It's extremely detailed to the point where you would really need to have commentary along with it to understand what's going on in the book. But I wanted to put something together that really gave people a deep, deep, rich look at how incredible these meditative systems really are, how sophisticated they are. Not many people know this, but during the Middle Indian period, there was a monastery in India called the Nalanda Monastery. And Nalanda Monastery basically had state sponsorship to be one of the largest universities in the world. And as one of the largest universities in the world, the Nalanda Monastery had 3 giant buildings filled with every single text of scholarly interest at the time. So they developed in concert and in debate with the other great scholars of their day, who were also phenomenal meditators. They weren't just philosophers or doing the equivalent of science for the day. They were also incredible meditators that they were having these discussions with. So they recorded in their texts the height, the true heights of great Indian thought at that time on psychology and the psychology of meditation based upon the collective experiences of the entire Buddhist community and the peoples that they were debating and discussing things with at that time. Those texts were then brought really just sort of the cream, not the whole milk, not the whole library, but just the cream was brought to Tibet at one time, well, actually on 2 occasions, and then translated and used to make the Tibetan corpus. And those materials have been preserved, thankfully, by the Tibetans. Otherwise, we wouldn't have most of them. So the level of sophistication and the level of detail that's provided in these texts is absolutely astronomical. It really does explain how you train in meditation, what all the moving parts are, what's going to stop you from making progress, and what's going to allow you to make progress. And most of those resources, I think, are where was that taking place? Where was Nalanda Monastery? You can look up Nalanda Monastery. They've excavated it. It's in India. They've excavated the site, so we know exactly where it is. You can actually visit there because they've turned it into a tourist attraction. So, as I was saying, there's incredibly detailed instructions for meditation. And most of the problems that I see, for example, on social media, when people make jokes about, oh, I can't meditate, I could never meditate, I try to put my mind on an object and my mind runs all over the place. Um, these come from just not understanding what meditation is, how it works, and how to be successful at it. And some people may have this sort of itch in the back of their mind that says, well, yeah, but really, really, when you look at Buddhist history and blah, 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 you look at meditative history, isn't it the case that it's mostly monks and nuns who gain deep realizations in meditation? Yeah, I mean, there's some argument. There's some argument about that. Yeah. But all the way back to the time of the Buddha, there were great lay practitioners of meditation who went out and gave teachings to other lay practitioners, and they were considered to be phenomenally realized adepts, greatly realized adepts of meditation. So this was, even at the time of the Buddha, was not just a monastic tradition or something. This is something that is recognized in the Buddhist tradition as something that lay people can actually do. So, of course, when you look at the Hindu traditions, even the modern Hindu traditions, if you just search the web, you will find quite a few descriptions, especially from people like Sadhguru, for example, who will say, I was going through the market and I met a vegetable seller that was quite clearly a meditative adept. When you go through the Indian tantric traditions, a large number of the Mahasiddhas, the greatly realized tantric practitioners of the Indian period, before it got wiped out in India and basically only survived in Tibet in that type of form, a great number of those Mahasiddhas, those greatly realized yogis, were lay people from all sorts of backgrounds. So it's worth considering that there is a long, long, long tradition of lay people being great meditators. The other tradition that I have a great deal of experience with, besides Buddhism, is Taoism, because I've trained in it for about 5 years now with a proper lineage holder for that tradition. And he's also a layperson. And Taoism, unlike Buddhism, was in China for, I don't know, maybe 1,000 years, was a layperson's tradition. And so they trained in meditation to a great depth, again, very great depth, and maintained it as a layperson's tradition for that entire period of time. So some of the resources there on that side provide advice that is very much tailored to doing all of this as a layperson. Okay, let's see what's happening in the chat here. I also suspect people are scared of what they'll find if they sit still for a while. More than one of my teachers, this is maybe becoming a bit of a trope amongst teachers that are really teaching this stuff properly, is that your body and mind are like a workshop. Your body and your mind are like a workshop. And if your workshop is cluttered and every time you turn around you bang your elbow on something and it's dark and it smells bad, and you're not going to want to spend very much time in your workshop. So to make the work of doing meditation easier, you need to improve the environment in which the meditation is taking place. Of course, you could, if you're like me and you've been doing this 20 years, you could have a space that's kind of decked out like this. You don't have to have that to do meditation practice. And then when you're looking at the body, I've done Tai Chi for a number of years, done martial arts for a number of years. There are a number of Taoist and Buddhist exercises that have to do with maintaining the body so that it's easier to do meditation. Very, very popular, of course, there are physical yogas coming from the Hindu practices that make the body better for meditation. But if the body is more comfortable, it'll be easier to sit in meditation. Secondly, when you look at the mind, I have a video coming out very soon about what to do between meditative sessions. And this is based on the Stages of the Path text, the Lamrim. It'll be very clearly described in that video. But one of the things that's mentioned quite often is you need to maintain basically some semblance of sanity between meditation sessions. And one of the ways that you do this is by cultivating new attitudes, new character traits, better character as a human being. Okay, let me back up for a second. When I was first getting into all this stuff, my first mentor, my first real mentor, who was himself a great lay practitioner, a great yogi living as a normal person, he said to me, before you become a saint, try becoming a gentleman. And sometimes he would also say, before you become a saint, try becoming a real human being. Try just becoming a normal, productive member of society. And I used to think that was a bit flippant. At the time, I was kind of like, what do you mean? Aren't I supposed to be pulling away from the world and renunciation and whatever? And he said, no. You need to be able to maintain yourself. You need to have some type of work that keeps you going in a conventional sense and provides some benefit to your community. You need to take care of the people around you. And it took me a long time to get this piece of advice, to really understand this piece of advice. A big component of that piece of advice is that you need to have good character as a person as you're interacting with other people in the world. Because if you don't, when you sit down to meditate, as you said, you sit down to meditate, and all of a sudden you have to look at what a piece of crap you've been. and so your workshop is a terrible place to do work in. It's smelly, it's dark, you know. Again, you turn around everywhere, you're bumping your elbows and your knees and your toes on everything. It's not a comfortable place to be. But if you have good character, when you go to sit down on the cushion, your mind is already relatively at ease. Of course, life has stress, difficulty, pain, loss, other things you need to learn how to deal with to be a good practitioner. But at least when things are sort of boring, let's say, or going well, your mind is relatively at ease from day to day, and therefore, between meditative sessions, you're maintaining a pretty good state of mind. And then when you sit down to meditate, you don't have to start your meditative session with just getting over what a piece of crap you've been all day. Right? So do your best. Just be honest, be upstanding, trying to work hard in a normal sense. Try to be helpful and thoughtful when it comes to other people. But, you know, also there's this concept in Buddhism called idiot compassion. And there's a great story about this where, I mean, it's a bit extreme, but these things do happen. There was a young woman who was notoriously kind of unintelligent, undiscerning, didn't really understand how to do real things in the real world. And this was somewhere in India at the time of the Buddha. And her mother had gotten so annoyed with these insects that were coming and biting her while she was sleeping. She told her daughter, she said, kill these insects. Just get rid of these insects. Do whatever you've got to do. And her daughter's heart was so moved by compassion, right? So much empathy for her mother, so much compassion. She thought, oh, of course I'm going to do whatever I can for my dear mother. But not thinking it all the way through, she picked up a wooden mallet or something and started beating the insects that were on her mother's blanket. And she beat the insects so hard that she killed her own mother. It's just unfathomable, right? But this is meant to illustrate, perhaps in an extreme way, that simply having compassion or empathy or concern or warmth in your heart is not enough. You also need to know how to carry out effective action in the world, which involves having a broad understanding of how things actually work. Simply having a warm heart is not enough. You also need wisdom and discernment and knowledge. Yeah? Okay. So, if you make the workshop cleaner by living a relatively speaking upstanding life, just in an ordinary sense, being a gentleman, trying to do your best in the world, trying to be honest, being forthright, trying to be relatively gentle unless it's not possible for you to be gentle, etc. Being a gentleman or a gentlewoman. Then, when you sit down to meditate at the end of the day, your mind will be already more serene, more settled. Because when you turn the mind inward, you don't have to deal with all of the horrific things you've done all day. You can just get right to the practice. Okay? Okay, well, we've been here about 20 minutes now. That's my soapboxing, and I don't see any new questions in the chat. So, Cleric, Offer John, some of the regulars. It's exciting to see you guys turning up every day for these. I really had no idea or expectation about how many people were going to turn up and actually do some practice and talk with me and ask questions. And I'm quite pleased that there's a couple of you. Okay, so let's do a bit of practice. Let's start with 5 minutes of intensive breath meditation. Okay, so place your mind. Actually, let's back up a little bit. So breathe in. Find the point in your nostril that has the most intense sensations and place all of your attention there. Don't analyze anything, don't visualize anything, don't imagine anything. Place your mind on the actual tactile sensations of breathing and then count by visualizing numbers. Don't visualize anything about your nostril, but you visualize the numbers 1 through 7 and then 6 to 0. And do that about 3 times. Okay? I will ring the bell. Oh, well, no bell today. I forgot to take it down, and I don't want to stand up. So I'll just let you know when we're done. Here we go. And begin. Okay. So please do share comments, questions, concerns in the chat. Yeah. Someone says in the chat their concentration is not as strong tonight and things are slipping through. You'll find as you practice from day to day that uh, the quality of your mind changes, especially in the beginning. And this has to do, in my general, I mean, humbly, I think that this has to do probably with the fact that your mind is not very well managed during the day, which is something we all deal with in the beginning. That's a big part of it. The other thing is that actually, as the quality of your meditative capability increases, it will seem like your mind is getting worse in the beginning. So if you feel like, for example, that you're trying to meditate and several weeks have gone by and it seems like your mind is just getting worse and worse, actually it's getting better. And the reason is you thought your mind was great when you first started doing this, perhaps. And now you realize it's a real bag of weasels, you know? Bag of weasels. Right. So we have quite a few people coming in. For those that are just dropping in, we're going to be doing some more meditation practice in a moment. Please do, if you have general questions about meditation or meditation practice, the theory of meditation, just drop it into the chat and I'll try to answer those questions before we do the next session. There's quite a delay on my side for when I get to see the comments and questions coming in. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and drop your comments and questions in there if you have not already. And then we'll do the next session, and anything that came in, I'll address after the next session. So let's do one more round of just doing meditation on the breath. And for those who are new, the technique that I recommend based upon the Bhavanakrama, it's a 7th or 8th century text on meditation by Kamalashila, is intensive, high energy, high intensity meditation on the breath. So for simplicity's sake, place your mind on the tactile sensations you feel inside the nostrils. So breathe in, find a high degree of tactile sensation in one part of one nostril, place your attention there. And when you do, don't visualize, don't imagine, don't mentally comment. Simply observe the sensations that occur there as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And then you're going to count from 1 to 7, 1 to 7, and then 6 to 0, and do about 3 rounds of breathing. Okay? So what it says in these texts is that the degree of intensity you need to bring to overcome your distraction at the early stages of meditation is equivalent to having someone standing over you with a sword threatening to kill you if you lose your concentration. I'm not making this up. You can find it in the Pali Canon. The Buddha even said, "You should be like a person whose hair is on fire, seeking a pond in which to dive." This is the degree of intensity you need to bring to your focus to get over the initial stages of your mind running away and not doing what you told it to do. So don't just bliss out and not actually bliss out. If you want the bliss, you got to put in the hard work up front. So here we go. We'll begin now. So breathe in. Find a patch of skin with a high degree of tactile sensation. Once you found that patch of skin, breathe out and then start your counting. Here we go. Begin. Okay. What I often recommend to my students with this technique, if you'd like to make rapid progress, rather than doing a longer session, do several short sessions with breaks in between. And you'll notice that if you can do 3 or 4 of these sessions with a little bit of a break in between, there will be a marked improvement in your concentration in a short period of time. And then using that as a foundation, you can begin to do something like body scanning meditation, what I call Foundation 2 in my course materials. And body scanning meditation will then calm your whole nervous system down and calm your body down. And according to the research and cognitive psychology, can even begin to flush traumas and emotional patterns and all sorts of things out of your system that you've had for years without having to do therapy and so forth, which is pretty remarkable. You know, I'm not saying that if you need therapy, you shouldn't do it. Go ahead and do it. I'm not saying you should stop taking your medication. Definitely keep taking your medication, okay? But body scanning is tremendously effective at calming the mind down. And so when you're trying to overcome the initial stages of distraction on the path of meditation, body scanning can be highly effective. Furthermore, once you have a basis in concentration from working with the breath, a lot of people will go, well, this thing with the breath has been so effective at letting me start the process of gaining concentration. I'm just going to carry on and do way more work with the breath. In a sense, fair enough. There are ways, if you have time and determination, to use the breath to go all the way to a meditation on pure consciousness, if you choose. That's not the way I teach it, because I think to do that, you need to be able to spend a lot of time doing breath meditation. And as a layperson living in the real world, breath meditation is not a practice unless you're living at your parents' house or something and you're unemployed. Breath practice is not something that you can do for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day so that you can break through into the deeper levels of meditation. So this is, again, why I transfer over from, once you start to get some concentration, then you start to transfer over to body scanning. Because body scanning and the 5 points and the 6 directions and opening the tactile sense gate are things that you can practice all day long while doing things in the real world. Again, my disclaimer, don't do it while operating heavy machinery and don't do it while driving your car. Since there are techniques you can bring into your real life and do all day long, you can then get to that stage where you're doing 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 16 hours of practice every day. Or at least you have little micro sessions of practice scattered throughout the day that are continuing to enhance whatever it is you've accomplished on the meditation cushion. So, using the techniques that I've collected, you can then, as a layperson living in the real world, make actual progress, deep progress on these, using these techniques. So you begin with breath practice because it's very good if you use it intensively, not if you're just sitting there going, listening to music that's soothing and going, oh yes, everything's... No, that's not going to help you cut through distraction. You're just listening to music and floating around in your head with your imagination. That's not going to fix your problems. If you want to gain concentration, intensity is what's required on the breath. And then body scanning. Calm the whole system down. And then take body scanning and body awareness into your everyday life. And now there's some real chance you'll make progress in concentration. And try to be a gentleman or a gentle lady, because then your workshop will be nicer and cleaner when you go to do some work in there. All right? I'm not seeing new questions come through the chat, so we'll jump into the next session. Let's do one more short breath practice, and from there we'll jump into a less intensive body scanning meditation so that I don't kill Cleric. Okay. So since we're going to be sitting for 15 minutes-ish, I'm also going to give you a little bit of advice on sitting for longer sessions. So when you do intensive breath meditation, don't move. It's 5 minutes. You're going to survive. Whatever hurts, just deal with it and keep your mind on the breath. Be intense. Be serious. If you're going to start sitting for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever the case may be, even the great masters who were highly accomplished gave their students all sorts of exercises so that they could do certain types of exercise and move around in the midst of whatever practice they were doing. So you're going to have to learn how to move around a little bit. So, for example, let's say that you're getting to 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, and you realize that your shoulders are tense, right? Now, if you start going like this and wiggling yourself around, that's going to pull your mind out of the meditative state. And there's something really interesting that happens with one of your bodily systems. It runs through your fascia, and it tells your body where your body is in space. And subconsciously, your body sends signals to your brain, and it says, this part's okay, you don't need to worry about it. And if it checks in a few times and that part is in the same place and hasn't moved, then it slows down those signals, and basically you get to pull that bandwidth into your concentration. And eventually those signals stop completely, and you can turn off the bodily sense entirely, for example, if you're meditating on the breath, besides obviously the point that you're meditating upon. Or if you're meditating on consciousness, then you can turn off the 5 senses entirely. Yeah? So to avoid pulling yourself completely out of the meditation that you're in and reigniting all of the systems in the body that pull bandwidth away from your concentration, try this, for example. So you can simply lift the shoulders and see how slowly I'm going, and then roll them forward and let them drop down. And you can lift the shoulders forward and then slowly release them down. And like this, maybe the tension in the neck or the tension in the shoulders will go away. And so there are a number of little exercises like this that you can do that don't completely pull you out of the session, because your mind has gotten into a more concentrated state. And I'll be dripping those to you as we go along in future live streams. In the same way, let's say that your butt is starting to hurt, or your hips, or your lower back. Rather than going like this, which is what most people do, rather than doing that, just do this. Slow circle. And then maybe you find a sort of a point you can sit on that's maybe not straight, but your spine is straight still. And you go, okay. And then you carry on from here. And then maybe it's been another 10 minutes and now that butt cheek is totally done. And you rotate. And then you sit here for a minute. I'm not going to mention who, but there was a fairly well-known meditator who was openly doing deep samadhi in India for a while. And there was a documentary done on this meditator where Discovery Channel came in because this person had been sitting upright in meditation for days. And the documentary crew was just trying to figure out how it was that this person's legs literally hadn't fallen off due to lack of circulation and gone gangrenous. And when they watched them over a long period of time, they noticed that from time to time they would shift like this. And then after a while they would shift like this. So even while you're in a deep state of concentration, if the pain in one part of the body becomes too much, you can make small adjustments and think of your concentration and the degree of concentration you have on a sliding scale, or like a volume knob. If your concentration is turned all the way up to 10, and then pain starts to come in and it's pulling your concentration down to a 6 or a 7, then maybe you come down to a 5, adjust slightly so the pain isn't there, and then bring it back up to a 9 or a 10 again. You see? So this is how the people that are doing marathon sessions of meditation, not in all cases, but in many cases, are managing their body and the pain in their body. Okay. Let's do another session. We're going to do a short, intensive breath meditation, and then we're going to do a body scanning meditation. And then we're going to open the visual sense gate just for fun. Okay? Because meditation should be fun. All right. Place your mind on the breath and begin. Move your attention from the nostril down to your left big toe. Now feel all of your left toes. Left ball of the foot, left arch, top of the foot, heel, ankle, the left calf, knee, lower thigh, upper thigh, and into the hip joint. Move to your right toes, right ball of the foot, arch, top of foot, heel, ankle, the calf, into the knee, lower thigh, upper thigh, and into the hip joint. Bring your attention to the front of the pelvis. And to the back of the pelvis, including the buttocks. Find the sacrum, the part of your spine that's between the two hip bones. Slide down to the tailbone. Bring your attention forward to the anus, perineum, and now take just maybe 20 seconds or so to scan through your sexual organ inside and out as best you can. Bring your awareness now to the front of the abdomen, the lower abdomen, that is, the waist. Bring your attention to the back part of the waist. Now bring your attention to the upper abdomen and the back part of the upper abdomen. Slide your attention to the chest in the front. And to the back of the chest in the front. In the back, rather, sorry. Bring your attention to the front of the left shoulder. Side, back, including the scapula, the top, and then go to the bicep. Elbow, forearm, wrist, and into the palm and the back of the hand. And quickly scan your fingers, thumb, pointer, middle, ring, pinky. Bring your attention to the front of the right arm, front of the right shoulder, side, back, the top, and bring the attention to the bicep area, elbow, forearm, wrist, palm, back of hand, thumb, pointer, middle, ring, pinky. Slide your attention up now to the lower third of the neck, including the collarbone area and the upper part of the shoulders above the scapula in the back. Middle third of the neck. Upper third of the neck. And into the joint between the neck and the skull. Back of the scalp. Left side. Right side. Slide around to the forehead. Very quick scan of the tactile sensations for each sense. So the ears, eyebrows and eyes, nose, left cheek, right cheek, the upper lip and chin, your lips, the inside of the mouth, so the cheeks and so forth inside the mouth, the teeth, roof of your mouth, below your tongue, and your tongue. Now feel your throat. And from there, slide up to the top of the head, so the whole top of your scalp. Bring your attention to the lower abdomen for a moment. So the waist and the inner part of the pelvis. So the abdominal cavity. Don't stretch your belly, but breathe into the lower part of the belly all the way down into the pelvis without extending your belly outward. Just breathe low. Very slowly now, open your eyes. And gaze forward, but don't look at anything in particular. Just gaze forward without looking at anything. Now, keep your eyes fixed in that gaze. Don't move the eyes. But bring your attention, sort of swim with your attention inside the visual field, as if the visual field were the monitor on a computer screen, or a television screen, or a painting. Just swim with your attention inside the visual field and look at everything you can see that's very close to you in the visual field, which would probably be your nose, maybe parts of your cheeks, your eyebrows. Now, without changing your gaze, shift your attention to everything you can see far away. And again, not by looking at the center of the visual field, but just by swimming around in the visual field. Let that go. Everything to the left, in your left periphery. Let that go. Everything in your right periphery. Let that go. Everything above you, as much as you can see, keep the gaze where it is. Just swim with your attention upward and look at your periphery. Let that go. Same thing, everything rather as far down as you can see without moving your gaze. Okay, now we're going to combine two directions at a time. So far away and close up, which I'll call forward and backwards. Okay, let that go. As far left and as far right as you can see. Okay, let that go. As far up and as far down as you can see. Okay, let that go. Now we're going to add them together. If you can only do 4 directions, then focus on up, down, and left, right. If you can do all 6, then also add on front and back. So we'll begin with front and back, but if front and back go away, just focus on up, down, left, right, okay? So front and back. keep that without losing that. If you can, add on left and right. Keep that and add on up and down. While holding that, just refresh front and back. Refresh left and right. Refresh up and down. And hold 6 points. Very gently close your eyes. Maybe blink a couple of times if you haven't been blinking. Okay. We human beings tend to be tactile and visual. If you can overcome the reactivity of your tactile sensations and your visual sensations, you'll be able to make tremendous, tremendous progress in meditation. So the reason that I teach these two and the remaining senses is that I'm training you to make each one of your sensory gates, right? Why are they called gates? They're gates because each of your senses, each of your 5 senses, is a way that experiences arrive at your mind, like a gateway. So I'm teaching you how to open each gateway completely. So we open the body completely so that you can rest in the nature of that consciousness, which is like a mirror. Your tactile consciousness is happy to reflect or generate a complete experience of pleasure. It's also happy to reflect or generate a horrific experience of pain. The consciousness itself is willing to generate whatever experience should occur in that time, if that makes sense. So when you open the whole tactile sense gate, like we did yesterday, for example, we just did scanning today, but when you open the whole tactile sense gate with 6 directions, and then let that go and simply abide in the nature of that consciousness, you're training tactile sensation to be less reactive to both pleasure and pain. And what you find is that actually the nature of that consciousness, even when pain is present, is actually quite blissful. As long as you're not zooming in on what seems to be a temporary pleasurable sensation or a temporary painful sensation, that consciousness itself is quite enjoyable when it is open and serene. So, secondly, vision, same thing. You learn to open up the vision so that you're seeing everything that is in the visual field. And like someone said, it's a bit like you know, it's a bit like changing your point of view in a video game, you know, where you were first person, But then you zoomed out and now you're almost like second person, where the character is looking at the world and you're looking at what the character is looking at. It is a bit like that. Uh, More profoundly, once you gain the ability to let go of the 6 points and you can just abide with vision fully open, then the mind becomes less reactive to pleasant and unpleasant things that appear to the vision. And the mind remains in a serene state that doesn't depend upon either pleasant or unpleasant things appearing. So whatever appears visually, the mind will maintain its nice condition, its serene condition. And this doesn't mean you become a zombie. You know, if you'd like good examples of this, just look at some beings who are actually realized beings and how they behave. They don't act like zombies. Usually they're much more human than humans. Okay. So if you learn how to do this with those two, the other ones will be much easier. Hearing is very profound in a way that's a little bit different than vision and the body, because the sphere of hearing, the range of hearing is miles. It goes out miles and miles and miles. So when you open the hearing gate, you have this sense that if you're focused 100% on the hearing gate, that your mind is just huge. So yes, it can be a bit scary to open the gates. Offer John says, you know, it's a bit scary. So it can be a bit scary because we ordinarily we think that our senses are what we are. And later also, when you do this with consciousness or the mind itself, you think that the contents of your mind is who you are. I think these things, I have these opinions, I've had these experiences, I have these views about the world, etc. That's actually all content in your mind that's subject to change. When you were born, you didn't have 98% of that stuff in your mind. So it's not you, it's just stuff that has accumulated on the surface of your mind. And so when you begin to pull back to, you know, second person point of view, in a sense, this can become even more profound because it gives you insight into what you actually are rather than what you think you are, which is really the name of the game when you're training in meditation. So this is the method to my madness, right? Earlier in this stream, I said, I'm trying to teach you techniques you can actually train in from day to day, all day long, and therefore make progress in the same way that somebody who enters retreat can make progress. Hey, you know what? Maybe our progress will be a little bit slower because we have to pay our taxes, we have to deal with our crappy boss, we have to deal with conflict in our relationships and so forth, sometimes in ways that monastics do not. Although, if you read the biographies of monastics, a lot of monastics deal with unbelievably difficult things. So just because they've taken vows doesn't mean that their life is now easy. Right. These techniques, body scanning and into opening the tactile sense gate or full body awareness, is a technique you can train in most of the day, at least when you're not doing things that are dangerous or high risk, like driving a vehicle or operating heavy machinery. Opening the visual sense gate is something you can do almost all day. When you get good at it, in the beginning you can't do this, but when you get good at it, you can actually still focus on the point you're focusing on while keeping the rest of the sense gate open. That's not easy to do, but eventually you can do it. And therefore, what appears to the visual sense gate is less, it pulls your actual mind less, your consciousness less. And therefore, when you try to sit down to meditate, there's less pull from your vision and from your body against your attention trying to go where you wanted to put it, to your breath, for example, or to one particular place of your body as you do a body scan. Ultimately, what this is leading up to is being able to place all of your attention on consciousness itself instead of the 5 external senses. That's where this goes. Because according to the great meditators, that's where you're going to gain the most important insights. Okay, are there questions or comments, concerns before we wrap it up for the day? By the way, happy Friday. I hope everyone has a good weekend. I'm still planning on doing a stream tomorrow from, again, probably 7:30 to 8:30. This is seeming like a good time. If you have questions in between, like I said, just follow the links in my bio here on and go to my Facebook page and then reach out to me directly. Or you can leave comments on this stream or any of the other videos on my channel. And if you're starting to get the feeling like you'd like more personalized coaching and more of the sort of hardcore theory, if you want to get more intensive instruction, go to the school course that I have listed, sign up for it, and that'll help me also, because if I'm going to do this full time, I need a certain number of people to sign up so that I can support myself in doing this work with you guys. So it's pretty reasonable, $29 a month. It's like one meal out, the equivalent of a single meal out every month for me to do this every single day with you guys. And offer personal instructions and get access to the book. Yeah. So Cleric asks, should I try to practice this during the day? Yes. So a big part of the course materials and stuff I'll be covering on this stream from day to day too is learning how to take these practices off the cushion. So how do you take full body awareness or body scanning off the cushion and into your normal life? How do you take opening the sense gates into your normal life? How do you take, like the most popular videos on YouTube for meditation are usually these gratitude meditations that are not very profound, I hate to say, but these sort of kind of fluffy gratitude meditations with music playing in the background. But even if you did that and you had a little tiny bit of gratitude in the morning and you have no ability to then regenerate that, to recreate that when your boss is yelling at you, or when your spouse is yelling at you, or when you get stuck in traffic, then it's not a very helpful activity. Maybe it's better than nothing, but it's not super helpful. So you need to have a set of skills internally that allows you to generate the state of mind you want to generate when it's relevant to generate it in the real world. You gain that ability through understanding what I call rumination meditation, which is in the same family as Vipassana, but it's for normal people like us that can't yet generate samadhi, can't yet generate full-blown single-pointed concentration. But those skills will allow you to generate whatever state of mind you'd like to be in when that state of mind is relevant and worth having. Or when you notice that one of your major flaws is coming up, if you're an arrogant person or a lustful person in a way that causes problems, or a jealous person in a way that causes problems, or an angry, impatient person in a way that causes problems, there are antidotes to these states of mind that come from ruminating, thinking about, carefully analyzing anger, for example, and how it negatively affects your life and other people's lives, and then replacing it with a different kind of thought and becoming familiar with that and getting skill in generating the antidote to anger so that you can generate it when you need it in real life. A bit like lifting weights. If you only do one kind of exercise all the time, your body gets sort of built up in a certain way, but it's really weak in another direction. But if you do some other exercise to build up the body in a different way, now it becomes strong in that direction. And when you need strength in that direction, the body has it. Likewise, if you have a big anger problem and you build up the antidote to that, that weakness will become less and less and less, and your ability to exert strength in the area of patience, in the area of loving kindness infused with wisdom, as we were talking about before, or compassion infused with wisdom, you'll have the strength to do it. So that's what rumination meditation is all about, what I call Foundation 5 in the course. All right. Offer John asks, what's the difference between the gates and the third eye? Okay. So, what I'm calling the gates is just your conventional senses. So, the third eye is an energetic center in the body, so called. I don't really like using the term energy. I've discussed this before, but you know, there are, at least somatically, psychologically, subjectively, maybe also in some other way. I'm open to either possibility, but certainly in a subjective sense, if you place your attention here on your forehead, somebody said this earlier today. They sent me a message and said, I was doing the body scanning and I just felt these really intense sensations on my forehead. And I said, well, yeah, because this is a real thing. There really are places in your body that if you place attention there, there's a ton of sensations there. And if you learn how to move stuff around in them, you can feel things moving around in them. And if you learn how to move things around in them, it causes psychological effects and visual effects and sound effects and all sorts of things. And if you get really good at that and you know what to use them for, they can be really profoundly spiritually important experiences. And the great yogis say that working with these systems can also lead to clairvoyance and memories of past lives and a number of other things. But if you're going to do that, you need to know what each center is for, how to use it. You need to have a system into which the experiences that will be generated by working with that particular chakra or center, you know, what there are going to be certain kinds of experiences that occur from doing that. There will be side effects that potentially can happen that are dangerous or damaging. And these systems where these technologies, let's say, exist, they have ways to overcome those problems. So it's important that if you're going to do that kind of work, you rely on somebody that really knows what they're talking about. And again, that's not a flavor of practice that I teach. I do know some of those practices, but I don't teach them because you only need to know like this much to do the practices, but you need to know like this much to teach them to somebody else. So the gates, as opposed to the energy centers of the body or the subtle body, right? These components of the subtle body, the gates are just your senses. So each gate, so-called, is just a way that a certain type of experience arrives at your mind. If you lost your eyeballs, then the experience of vision could no longer pass through a gate to reach your mind. Because the gate for vision is your eyeballs, right? In a similar way, if the processing ability for vision was damaged, what's called the visual consciousness in Buddhist psychology, if your visual consciousness was damaged, even if your eyes worked perfectly, you wouldn't be able to see either. So the eyes and the visual consciousness are a gate through which you experience colors and shapes. So each gateway has specific and unique objects of experience. So you don't ever see colors and shapes unless you have certain types of abnormal psychology. You don't ever see colors and shapes with your ear consciousness. You don't ever hear sounds with your visual consciousness. So you hear with your, right? So each one has unique objects. Does that make sense? Yes, yes. So that is something I mentioned a few days ago, but you know, new people may see this at some point. In the same way, consciousness itself is considered a sixth sense in Buddhism. And yes, the great meditators and yogis do say that it's using your consciousness. And sixth sense, it shouldn't sound mystical. It's just that consciousness, awareness, your mind, whatever word you want to use, has unique objects. In the same way that your ears can't smell anything, if you visualize an apple right now, and it's a red apple with a brown stem and one green leaf, okay? Now, as best you can, imagine the smell of that apple. and flick that apple. Can you hear the apple? Imagine taking a bite of the apple. So in your mind, in your mind's eye, let's say, your consciousness can experience an object like this visualized apple that can't be experienced by your 5 external senses. So this apple you're experiencing in your visualized experience is unique to consciousness in the same way that sound is unique to your ear consciousness. So you have a 6th sense which allows you to see objects that are only visible to consciousness. And some of the things that are other things that are unique to your 6th sense, to your consciousness, are memory, intention, motivation, any kind of imagined or remembered image of sound or smell or taste, etc. Yeah, someone said they weren't able to do all of the things with the apple, but the point is that anything you do with the imagined or visualized apple is completely unique to consciousness. So the 6th sense sees or experiences all of these mental things that your other 5 senses can't see or experience. Yes. So when I talk about opening the sense gates, I'm talking about learning how to experience the fundamental nature of each consciousness. The fundamental or the ground condition of each consciousness is that it generates a unique type of experience, and then it knows or experiences that experience. So visual consciousness generates an experience of vision, and then it experiences that experience of vision. That's what it does by nature. So that's its fundamental nature. There's another aspect to its fundamental nature, but we don't need to talk about that today. But that's a very important point in terms of what we're doing with opening the gate. So the gate is closed partially, right? Just like a door. If the door is only partway open, you can only see a little bit through the door. But if you open the door completely, well, now you can see everything. So just like we did today with opening the visual gate, before you open the visual gate, you probably saw a little tunnel like this, and this was all kind of vague and you weren't even paying attention to it. But then you start to open the visual sense gate and you realize that your vision, you can't even see on camera. I can see both of my hands stretched out at 90 degrees from my body. I can see both of them. And I can see my feet. And I can see the ceiling, all while I'm looking at you. That's having the visual gate open. So you can do the same with sound, taste, smell, tactile. And these are all, again, detailed to a great degree in the materials that I have in the course. And then once you've done that, all of the senses will be less reactive because your mind's not running around inside each of the senses randomly. You just open them and they relax. And then you turn the mind inwards towards consciousness and you investigate consciousness with the 5 external senses relaxed and open. And then when you try to pull your attention away from them, it just comes in because your mind is used to those senses not needing to be, or rather your mind is used to not running around inside of those 5 senses in a million different directions. So this is maybe a bit too theoretical, but that is the method to my madness. And then you can take these practices into your real life and do them. You see? Okay. We will wrap it up here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. As I always say, hope to see you again soon. You can see my little skull here. You never know. You never know if I'll see you again soon, but I hope we meet again very soon. Cheers.